So I want to start off by saying thank you to everybody who watched video number 5. For those of you who haven't, video number 5 is where I talk while I'm painting, and I talk about the philosophy behind the farm and why we're doing it the way we're doing it. It's probably the most, thus far, quintessential and important video I've produced in regards to what we are trying to accomplish. Thank you for people for watching it. I know an hour is sometimes a long video, so I wanted to get that stuff out there, and I will be talking about stuff in agriculture during every video to some extent or another, and we're trying to get the YouTube channel to be a regular posting. I really enjoy making the videos. We both enjoy it. We both enjoy the process. We just put out a video today on a walkthrough with the fall crop, and of course the bull mastiff who lives in the house, Kona, who is adorable and ridiculous. So anytime I can feature Kona, I'm gonna feature her. I love dogs. So we hope to get ourselves a dog soon, but we have to go away for grazing school. So the dogs and the rabbits and all these things have to wait. We are still going to do rabbits. But I'm being very particular, and since my shoulder had to heal, I wasn't quite ready to do this. My shoulder is still healing, but as you'll notice, I am not wearing my sling right now. I got the go-ahead to not have to wear the sling. I'm restricted to like 10 pounds, so I can do very minimal stuff. I have to be careful because of the amount of work they did. Those of you who don't know, I had an injury years ago, serious rotator cuff tear. I had it fixed in '94, and as life goes, 25 years later, as with most other parts of my body, the wheels are starting to fall off. It's just the way it is. I gotta work on being in shape. Well, I mean, round is a shape, but you know. So they had to go in and they did a lot of reconstruction work with my shoulder, and people are like, that's terrible. I'm like, no, it's great. It doesn't hurt. Before, there was a big flap of cartilage crushing one of the nerve bundles. And every time I'd move my arm, it was like somebody took a nice knife and just was slowly pushing into my shoulder. And most of that is now gone, and my shoulder feels pretty good, so we just gotta be gentle with it. So here's what we're working on today. We got a lot of our foreground stuff painted in the other day. We got some of our flora and fauna, and some of our insect friends are going in. We got a little spider web over here. We got other plants. I want to do some other plants in here before we take it to the color step. So today I'm going to be adding some more plant life here, some opening thistles, stuff like that. Might be playing with a little bit of my foreground elements. And then of course this is the underpainting, so believe it or not, once we're done with this, we still have to do the painting. It's one of the reasons why this style of painting is not as common as it used to be. But when you see it done, I feel like there's an elegance to it, and there's a depth that you just don't get out of an alla prima or all-at-once style of painting. And that, of course, is my bias. That does also not mean that people who do all alla prima are not getting depth or they're not getting beauty. I've seen some profound stuff, but this is kind of how I learned, and this is what I like. So I'm working with this for a little while. So we're going to work on that. We're in the foreground today, and hopefully tomorrow, at some point, I'll be jumping into a little bit of color, so that'll be good. I mean, after all, like I said, I wasn't gonna rush it, but I think having this done before this Sunday would be really good. And we're still trying to think about how we want to do the prints, but we're thinking about doing, like I was saying, a short run of Z-Clay, high quality, museum quality prints. Those would be something that I would put up for sale, and again, we appreciate everything everybody has done. There have been so many people who have got themselves a beautiful piece of art, and they have invested in our dream, which helps us invest in regenerative agriculture. And the whole point of the farm is regenerative agriculture, not only to do it, but to help others understand it, because we believe with our heart that this is the future. If you want to save things, this has to happen. It's not that it needs to happen 20 years from now or 30 years from now or 2 weeks from now. It has to happen now. So if we had it our way, it would be happening more now, but you know, you do things at the speed and finance you can afford to do them. So thanks for checking it out, and here's today's painting. So before we start actually painting, I've got to do some drawing. Over here seems to be working really well. There's a good balance of things. I'm enjoying this middle part. In case you're wondering what's going on, like you've got not a lot of activity, but there's a lot of depth in the middle. I love in traditional art, especially in Asia, they allow for, it's almost a Taoist concept, they allow for sections that are just kind of subtle, and they allow the brain to walk away from it and come back to it. It's not as intrusive, it's not as overwhelming. Human beings like depth. They like to be able to see depth. So giving them the opportunity to see depth and things up close and the high and the low, I think because we're primates, it makes us happy. That's just my opinion. Now, when I was working on this, I'm fine with this over here. These are pretty and subtle. Probably a little bit darker towards the top at the back end, just because when it comes to fog, if you look out over fog, a lot of times when trees poke up, it's really only the top part that becomes contrasty. As it dips down, the level of moisture that is sitting at ground level becomes so much of a distortion that you don't actually see the tree. The light just simply cannot, it hits the tree, but it's not hitting the tree with enough force. It's bouncing off the tree and reflecting into your eyes, but it's not doing so without going through a lot of atmosphere. So you get this huge diffusion. It's probably gonna need a little darker back here just because of the reflection, but I need an element back here. Now, I was okay with, sometimes I get into repetition, especially with doing stuff like this. You just keep copying, trying to copy in very similar shapes, because grasses and weeds and plants and whatnot. I suppose weed is an unfair thing, because weed's kind of a relative term. It depends on whether or not something will actually eat it. A lot of animals actually will eat weeds. They only bother humans. And oddly enough, while I'm on a side tangent, right now we have, what's it called? There's a plant blooming and everyone's allergic to it. Can't remember the name of it. What's the name of it? Ragweed. And sorry, I was totally blank. My wife's over there. I was totally blanking out. Ragweed, as terrible as it is, and for some reason people blame goldenrod. I'm going to get back to this in just a second. For being allergic, for having allergy, but it's the ragweed. And actually, animals like sheep and cows, they love ragweed. So I'm over here making thistles, and I kind of accidentally started to reproduce distracting levels of human anatomy, if you follow my meaning. And so I feel like that bothers me enough, you know, it's just the way the brain works, that I got to change this. So since I want to change this, and I'm not too sure how I want to do it, sometimes I'm a little reticent when it comes to painting. I've got some chalk, and with chalk, I can draw on the surface. It'll leave a light line, but it won't hurt the paint or interrupt anything. And even if I paint over it, it's not a big deal. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start constructing more of a bloomed thistle over here and some other plant activity. And we're kind of diminish the lovely pear here. And that will, yeah, that'll be better. So this is wet. We just finished this. This is now our thistle is less suggestive. So one of the reasons, and I'm going to back you up, so hopefully I don't make you nauseous here. One of the reasons why it was necessary to fix this, other than that there wasn't enough information, and the information that was there was overly simple, is that this part of the painting had no informational weight. When human beings look at images, excuse the background noise here while I move that. When human beings look at images, they're looking at the whole image and they're basing their judgment on closeness and depth, and everything has everything to do with a few factors. It has to do with contrast. You can observe this yourself. If you go outside and you look at an object close to your hand, you will notice it has more contrast. The darker dark sections are much darker, and the lighter light sections are much lighter, with the exception of light sources. So if you were to hold up a blue playing card, like in front of your face almost on a bright day, and then have somebody else hold another blue playing card at like a distance of 50 feet, it's going to be very obvious almost immediately to your eye which one's closer. And you say, yeah, because it's closer. But that's not how the brain reads it. The brain reads it in clarity and contrast are the two things that are telling it information. So things that are up front have a crisp clarity and they have a greater level of contrast. So you would see a light and a dark right next to each other. Whereas back in here, you really don't see that. You see light and dark next to each other. This is like a 4.5 on the grayscale. This is like a 5.5 on the grayscale. There's no comparison. We know, our brain knows that it's dark over here. It knows it's just as dark in this little patch as it is over here, if not darker. It knows it's just as dark back there, but we have to trick the brain into seeing the depth. It also knows that out there it's night, so those mountains are dark. And yet at the same time, the brain needs to see it. This is a good visual cue. There is some chalk left over. This is a good visual cue for the brain. So the brain will come in here and it'll look at this and it moves through the whole piece. So imagine, this is where the golden ratio thing comes in. Imagine a spiral based on the idea of pi, ever expanding, not pi, the golden ratio. So if you started here and started a spiral, and you imagine it do this, see that? There's a balance element. There's not much going on in here. It doesn't need to be because all the information is here. This patch of clouds kind of interrupts it. It sits slightly behind here. There's this motion is built into it. All paintings, all art that works well is balanced, and it all uses geometry to do it. These help with the balance. So having this flow with these thistles will help the brain follow this through the piece. And of course, we're gonna have some field glitter, and that'll help too. I'm gonna add in some more spider webs. I wanna build on the wood sorrel, clover and whatnot. All these things make up the diverse field, you know, so we'll keep adding in these elements. And of course we got some Timothy hay and whatnot. But again, the most important thing is it's all balanced and it flows. I gotta go in and I'm gonna hit the edges of everything that the moon is hitting, just very carefully with a small amount of white, because not white, like very light color, because I want to have that feeling of shine coming from the back, but I also wanted you to be able to see what's going on. You can see some of it in the chalk residue left over in the thistle. So we'll jump into that part next. Okay, so I think we've got it where we want to. You can see the field glitter glowing in among the plants. This is kind of the moment I think everyone's been waiting for. The underpainting is done. Or it's as done as it's gonna be. You know, you can always add stuff, like this spider web. Obviously that's chalk still, I didn't want that. I will probably do a spider web. This one I made more pronounced. I'm using this type of spider web. This is very, it's a visual symbol of a spider web. If you look in nature, very organic spider webs, especially the ones that happen in beautifully diverse fields, don't look like this. They're usually some sort of funnel structure. They usually will be much softer and much finer. But if you're trying to communicate a spider web, sometimes you need a visual symbol. This is true in painting. Fine art painting tends to avoid these things. It doesn't care. It's just you either get it or you don't. And the little elements that they include should tell you what it is. I know that this is more of an illustration combined with a fine art landscape, so I'm okay with using a little bit of symbolism to get my point across. We got a spider, we got some clover, we got some wood sorrel, we have some Timothy hay, we have some native field grasses. I didn't put any gamma in here because I don't think gamma makes it to the Northeast, but believe me, I'm going to be doing a painting with gamma grass. We got our thistles. In the background, we got some other weeds. That was about as far as I felt like it needed to go. So we've got all of our stuff here. Also, you see how much different this is now? It actually has that backluminous effect, backlit effect, where the moon is raining down light. Your brain will read these as very light. Nothing here is white. Not even this is pure white yet. It's just not. Everything in this painting is either very, very, very dark gray or very, very, very light gray. Even this mark down here, which is the darkest point in the lower left point in the painting, and it's there for a reason, is not black. There is no black in this painting. This underpainting is just levels of gray. No pure black at all. Black is a very flattening thing. It does crack. White and black next to each other, like I was talking about. This pulls the viewer over here and anchors you down in the grass. You're looking at this from, you know, maybe waist or chest height. This is pretty high stuff. If you're seeing clover, you're lower than that. You're maybe down at 1.5 feet, 2 feet off the ground. It's tough to get a human being to see the world from this perspective, but this is the most important part of any farm, is the soil biome. So, and including all these elements here and suggesting that there are insects without drawing in too many of them. And people all the time will worry about these things. In reductionist agriculture, they worry about the insects. In regenerative agriculture, we don't care. It does not matter because we put a system in place to deal with it. So this way you've got that light. Well, you can almost see it like a curve. The fireflies dance on either side of that light curve to move the viewer through the field, literally and figuratively. So we have that, again, that spiral. We're also doing a spiral, if you can imagine depth. This is way far away and spiraling towards you, and then wham! So it's got that depth to the spiral as well as the balance of the piece. Oh, that's it for this part. This part of the painting is done. The next part has got to be the color. Oh, yeah. And what you're not seeing yet. But that's okay. We'll get to that part. Everything in its own time. Thanks for watching. We'll put up a video tomorrow. We're going to do a video on our first batch of kombucha. It's not our first batch, but the first one that I have managed to film and not screw that up, because we did one a while back and boy did I screw that up. So now you get to see us do a little bit of kombucha. If you haven't done kombucha at home, it's really easy. We'll go over some of the basics. There's a ton of information on it. It's the perfect time of year to do this. Get a kombucha started, get yourself a good SCOBY going, and start making kombucha with all this abundant fruit that we now are going to have, that we have now, and we're going to have it for the next month or so, as farmers everywhere are trying to look for things to do with their fruit. The other thing we're getting into is other types of fermenting. We've been doing some fermenting. It used to be the way that people preserved food, and there's a lot of health in fermented foods. So we're going to be doing a lot of different fermented vegetables. Traditional fermentation, not canning. So this will be interesting. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.